Hi, and welcome back to Abilene People, the podcast here on BigCountryHomepage.com and KTAB Plus, where we talk to Abilene's most interesting people. Now, if a guy is out in Coleman County, but he's got family in Abilene, that counts, doesn't it, Jeff?
That counts, and most of what I do is in Abilene, Taylor County.
Jeff Gore, you are a cowboy, singer, actor, preacher, poet. Which one of those describes you best?
I think probably... storyteller. I think all of that is wrapped up in storyteller. I kind of feel like when it comes to ministry, I feel like we're more missionary than we are evangelist or preacher or whatever, because we just go all over and minister to people all over the country. But all of that is the singing and the movies and all of that is about telling stories, telling people stories.
And you were telling me a few minutes ago that a lot of the old cowboy poems became songs, and some of them were poems never intended to be songs. Some of them put music to real quick. Give me an example of one of those.
Well, the prime example is a song that was really popular in the 1920s called "When the Work's All Done This Fall." And it's about a cowboy who gets killed in a stampede, and he's talking about going back to see his mother when they got done shipping the cattle in the fall, or when the work's all done, and he gets killed in the stampede. It's one of those kind of stories, but it was originally a poem by D.J. O'Malley, written back in the 1800s. But when radio became really popular, and even during the Depression, there was radios in most people's homes. People would sit around in the evenings and listen to radio shows, and so it was not, talk radio wasn't big back then at all. And so back then it was music radio and music shows and those kind of things. And so a lot of those guys back then would find these old cowboy stories, cowboy poems, and they put them to music.
And that sounds like a pretty sad, tragic poem into a song. Can you play it? Do you know it?
Sure can.
Yeah.
Sure can. I can play a little bit of it.
Then, this is the one about the guy that got killed on the stampede.
Yep, when the work's all done this fall. Jolly cowboys discussing plans at ease. Says one, I tell you something, boys, if you listen, please. I have got a home, boys, a good one you all know. And I am gonna see it when the work's all done this fall. When I left my home, boys, my mama for me cried. She begged me not to go, boys, for me she would have died. My mother's heart is breaking, aching for me, that's all. And I'm gonna see my mother when the work's all done this fall. That very night this cowboy went out to stand his guard. The night was dark and cloudy and storming very hard. The cattle, they got frightened and rushed a wild stampede. The cowboy tried to head them while riding at full speed. Riding in the darkness, so loudly did he shout, trying hard to head them and turn the herd about. His saddle horse did stumble, and on him he did fall. He'll not see his mother when the work's all done this fall. Charlie was buried at sunrise, no tombstone for his head. Nothing but a little board, and this is all it said. Charlie died at daybreak, he died from a fall. And he'll not see his mother when the work's all done this fall.
Now, come on, Jeff. That's a sad song.
That's a sad song. That's an abbreviated version. We didn't talk about him getting mangled and all that stuff. But it is a sad song. And, you know, it's interesting. George W. Saunders was the first president of the Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association, or one of the early presidents. And back in like 1916 or 1917, actually on my birthday, March the 10th, they gathered together for the convention in San Antonio, Texas. And he said, all right, all you old men that went up the trail on those trail drives in the late 1800s that are still living, I want you to go home and I want to write your stories. You need to write your stories down the best you can on paper. And when we meet back here for this convention next year, I want you to bring those to me.
And he started what was called the Old Trail Drivers Association, separate from the Cattle Raisers Association. And that became a book called The Trail Drivers of Texas. And it is a thick, thick, thick book. And everything really, really good from Lonesome Dove, Larry McMurtry stole from that book. Names and everything. And so it's an amazing book. You can still get University of Texas Press, I'm pretty sure still has it. I'm sure it's on Amazon. It's a big, thick book. It's about as thick as a dictionary or an old Bible. It's called The Trail Drivers of Texas. And in that book, he said that every cowboy that ever died there must be a song or a poem written about every single cowboy that ever died on a trail drive in a stampede, because there's a whole lot of songs and poems about cowboys dying in stampedes, and there just weren't that many cowboys that died in stampedes.
But you love those stories.
Oh, yeah, they're great stories.
Now, you still, to this day, if I've got it right, will go out and camp with a chuck wagon and some cowboys and do that kind of stuff on ranches all the way from Texas to Idaho. Is that
Yes,
true?
sir. Yes, sir. I spend time horseback on a lot of different ranches and have over the years. I didn't grow up in that. My parents were not cowboy people, but I was kind of taken under the wing of a cowboy and a man there in our church. And he was a good guy, a great man and Christian man. But he was good at taking care of young men, keeping us on the straight and narrow and working us hard, and taught me cowboy stuff and kind of like a second dad to me. And so I've been cowboying off and on all my life. And I have spent some time at the wagon on some pretty big ranches. When I started, I was the kid on the crew. And now the last time I went out with the wagon, I was the only one over 40 that stayed there overnight every night. And I figured out it's a young man's game. There's not very many old ones out there still hanging out. There's not a whole lot of Boots O'Neills running around that's like on the 460s, 94 years old, I think, still riding most days out there. There are not very many of those out there. Old Tom Morehouse and him are some of the older ones that still cowboy on a regular basis. But
So I bet you can watch something like Lonesome Dove or the show Yellowstone, and you can see what's real and what's not pretty quick.
yeah, and they're apples and oranges. Lonesome Dove was extremely accurate in so many ways. The movie part was, especially the way it looks. Kerry White was the production designer on that. He's amazing. Everything he's ever done has been great. He was on Good Old Boys and Barbarossa and Lonesome Dove. He has actually been the production designer. That's the guy that kind of lines up all of the props and the look of the movie, the basic look of the props and the costumes and all of that stuff is basically the job of a production designer. He has done a lot on those Taylor Sheridan productions, 1883 and some of them. That's why they have the great look that they have, the great look. Now, there are a lot of poetic license and stuff like that with what really goes on in reality on those shows because they're selling TV time. But Lonesome Dove was very well put together. Bill Whitliff wrote a great screenplay for that movie. And as I said, Kerry White was a great props guy and production designer.
You've won awards and you've been involved in this cowboy poetry, singing, songwriting, and storytelling movement for a long time. I know that there's an annual gathering out in Alpine, but this year they're adding Bastrop to that. And,
Yes, sir.
And you're not going to Alpine, you're going to Bastrop. Tell us about it.
Well, Alpine Port Together, the Texas Cowboy Port Together was in Alpine for about 30 years. And the group that put that on got older and kind of decided they were going to put that to rest. They did, but it was so popular and such a great thing that some other people picked it up and carried it on as the Lone Star Cowboy Poetry Gathering. And that's been going on the last several years there in Alpine, Texas, and it just grows and gets better every year. And so this year they're expanding, and they're trying something very, very bold, very brave. They're having it at Alpine and Bastrop, it's opposite ends of the state, same weekend. See how that goes, spreading out some of the performers, adding some more performers and stuff. And I've been at the Alpine Port Together and off and on for years. 27 of the first 30 years of the first group was on it, and most of the years since they've been doing this one, the Lone Star Port Together, and I've been there most every year since then. And now I'm going to be at Bastrop this year, and so we're going to see how that goes.
What do you do with these things? Do you share a lot of poetry, and do you share a lot of music?
They're broken up in sessions. Some of them are ticketed shows and some of them are free shows for the people during the day. The one at Alpine is in classrooms and auditoriums there on the Sol Ross campus. Bastrop is going to be at the convention center in Bastrop and also a museum that's there. and it'll be spread out around this. It's new, so we're kind of learning. I'm kind of learning as we go along on that. But there's a Chuck Wagon breakfast both Friday and Saturday morning that people can get in on. But the sessions, the hourly or whatever sessions that are broke up through the day, some of them are poetry, some of them are music, and some of them are a mix of both. And then the night shows will be some of both. There'll be poets and singers. We're kicking it off Wednesday night with an evening with Barry Corbin. He's going to be the actor Barry Corbin will be there telling stories and sharing with people on the Wednesday night. And then Thursday it kicks off with a taste of the poetry gathering that morning and a press conference, and I'll be involved in all of that from then on through Saturday night.
And when you go to that, are you? I would assume pretty much everybody knows exactly who Jeff Gore is.
I've been around long enough that most people at least know who I am. They may not know me, or they may not, listen to my music all the time, but they pretty well know who that guy is over there. And I've been around for a long time. I was Male Vocalist of the Year of the Academy of Western Artists in 1997. I laugh because several years ago I was with Kristen Harris at a deal, and Kristen Harris is this amazing cowgirl singer and Western swing singer, and just was in a movie called A Ranch Musical they made about her and for her, and they were introducing her as the Female Vocalist of the Year of the Academy of Western Artists, and this was just a few years ago. And then when they announced me coming up later, they said, and he's the Male Vocalist of the Year in Academy of Western Artists. And I had to tell the audience, in the art of full disclosure, she's the current Female Vocalist of the Year at that time. And I said, I won that award when she was 3. So, all things are relative. So that's been a long time ago. But in 2005, I think I'm most honored with this. In 2005, the American Cowboy Culture Association in Lubbock, Texas, there was a conjunction of the National Cowboy Symposium and the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award in cowboy music. And at the time, I was only I think I was 41, maybe something like that. I'd have to do
youngest to ever
get. They didn't say we're going to do math today, but anyway.
But you're the youngest to ever get.
The youngest one to ever get that award at the time. I don't know if they've had younger ones since then, but I was the youngest one to ever receive that award. At the time.
We'll just say they haven't. How about that? All the time.
That's good.
All the time. So when is the event in Bastrop and in Alpine?
Alpine and Bastrop are both 18th through the 21st.
That's just a couple of weeks away.
Just a couple of weeks away, and so you still got time to go. You still got time to be there. There's obviously tons of hotels in the Bastrop, Austin area you can stay at. There's not as many hotels in Alpine, but there are probably still some that have some rooms that you can get rooms available, or RV spaces. There's RV places there in Alpine. It's a great gathering. It has always been the best gathering, in my opinion. Even with the new thing, it's not changed so drastically. So if people came in the old days and they think, well, I like it the old way, it's not a lot different in what you're going to see and what you're going to hear and how you're going to enjoy, and the camaraderie and the love for the craft of cowboy music and poetry. It's still just an amazing Texas character of an event, and it's from Alpine, but now we're in Bastrop. We're going to see how it goes, but I think it'll be great.
That one in Bastrop's got a high bar to reach because the ambiance of Alpine just screams old cowboy, old Texas, old West, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does, and I'm hoping that some people that go to Alpine all the time will see some people on the show at Bastrop that they really don't want to miss seeing, and will come that have been to Alpine before just to help it kind of move on. But I'm really hoping that because it's in Bastrop, we get a broader audience.
I'm sure you will.
That are not, they're not going to drive a day out to Alpine. And there's a lot of people that, I drive for a living. I travel all over the country 200 days a year. And so, an 8-hour drive's nothing for me. We do that all the time. But most people, if they have to drive more than 2 or 3 hours to go somewhere, they're not going. And so there's a lot of music in the Austin area, and a lot of music interest in the Austin area. And I think that they would be very smart to go take a taste of this if they've never tasted it before.
And speaking of taking a taste, there's an event tonight, the day we're shooting this podcast in Abilene, that's all about you and a new album that you've got coming out. Tell us a little about it.
I've got a brand new album out called The Outlier, and a friend of mine kind of gave me that title, and he called me, he's a word guy, and he's always having a word of the year. And he told me he thought that he finally found the word that describes me. It's outlier. And he said, look it up. And he just hung up. So I looked it up, and it's someone that's on the edge or kind of right on the cusp of a genre or something like that, but really kind of pushes the boundaries. So I took that as a great compliment. But my new record, The Outlier, is out. It's on all streaming platforms: iTunes, Amazon Music, YouTube, Pandora, Spotify. But we're having a party at the Western Heritage Classic Ranch House, the rock building just east of the main office at Taylor County Expo Center, tonight, 5:30 to 8. Everyone is welcome. It is wide open, free. Anyone can come. No admittance charges. There's going to be cake, and there's going to be a nacho bar. And I'm going to sing some and visit some and sing some and visit some. And
yeah, I was going to ask how much you're going to sing tonight. And can you, speaking of tastes, or maybe I don't know that it works to say a taste of music, how about a little listen of music and do a little bit of what you're going to do tonight?
I can do one. I can do what I'm going to do.
See, I'm surprised Outlier. I don't know. My word for you would be cowboy.
I take that as a great compliment. Buck Ramsey said one time, "You're only a cowboy if somebody calls you that." And so I take that as a great compliment. I take that as probably the highest compliment. I think so much of men that are horseback every single day, all day on ranches. And no matter how much I have worked on cattle ranches, and no matter how much I've been around horses all my life, it is still a whole nother echelon. Those guys that from the time they were young to the time they're old have been horseback every single day, doing the work of a cowboy, so that people have no idea what all the impact is that makes. Every time you sit down and have a hamburger, there was a cowboy or a bunch of cowboys involved in that somehow.
Yeah, you know that old, I think several have recorded it, but I'm thinking from the movie Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson, you know, my rifle, my pony, and me, you know, I love that old song. Yeah. And I always, I don't know, every time I hear it, it kind of makes me a mixture of melancholy and feel real good all at the same time. Yeah. It's a weird thing. It's kind of
that way.
But you know, that old idea that we're out here, you know, I'm just out here with my horse, I'm riding along. I don't know if that's the kind of stuff that's on your album Outlier. I hadn't had the privilege of listening to it yet, but I'm sure going to download it.
Some of all of it. It's a little bit, you know, all of my albums are kind of old. This is an album that I came to decide to do this album. I wasn't sure I was going to do any more records, and I've got a bunch of records out, but I finally decided to do this, and because there's songs that I've been singing forever, like the one I did a minute ago, and that was an abbreviated version of the song. There's a lot more verses to it, but there's several songs like that, Little Joe the Wrangler, and some of those that I've been singing for years, but I never recorded. And so I wanted to record some of those old ones.
Oh, great. So that's what Outlier is.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's a couple of new songs on there that I've never recorded before, one that I wrote, and one that's an old Stephen Foster song. That's a great old song. He's the first great singer-songwriter in America. Then there's a couple of songs that were written by other people. There's a Badger Clark poem that Don Edwards put to music a few years ago called The Old Cowman, and it's on there. And then I put two songs on there that I recorded before, but it's been 35 years since I recorded them. And so, you know, my voice has changed and the world has changed, and over a course of time, I do them a little different than I used to. But I'm going to do a song, one of those. I actually wrote this when I was 17 years old. And I'd been singing all my life, and since I was a little kid with my family. And when my brother and the other guys I sang with in groups graduated off, went to college, I knew I had to do something on my own, and I didn't want to cart a piano player and a band along with me. I wanted to be able to do kind of my own thing for once, and I kind of felt this freedom. It wasn't that what we did was bad. We loved doing what we did, and I loved doing all that. But I had to start something different, and so I learned how to play the guitar, and I started writing songs and singing old cowboy songs when I was about 15, 16 years old, and then got paid the first time when I was 17 years old, and I thought I'd never be poor again in my life. Sat at the White Elephant Saloon in downtown Stockyards, Fort Worth, Texas, when I was 18, discovered Don Edwards, who was a great cowboy singer that passed away a couple of years ago now, and that wrote the music to the Old Cowman on my record now. And I watched him sit there and sing for about 3 hours and just tell stories and sing, sitting on a stool and playing cowboy songs. And I thought, man, if I could ever do that, I'd be the king of the world.
I wonder how much you got paid for that. Do you remember?
You know, I don't know. I think he was part owner in that place for a while, but he was a he was as good as there ever was.
Yeah.
And so anyway, this is a song I wrote when I was 17. It's one of the only songs I ever wrote that far back that I'll still sing to humans. From Sonora and old Mexico to Alberta and the ranges between, the horses he rides and the trails he leaves behind number more than most people's dreams. So call him cowpoke, vaquero, buckaroo, cowpuncher, but whatever you do, just remember he's a cowboy, he's a legend, he's a hero, the foundation and the pride of our land. With his reins held in one hand and his life in the other, he climbs aboard and hangs on to a dream. He'll ride 'em all, whether docile with a little spirit, or even crazy and bustin', but loose at the seams. So call him cowpoke, vaquero, buckaroo, cowpuncher, but whatever you do, just remember he's a cowboy, he's a legend, he's a hero, the foundation and the pride of our land. From nobody knows if he stays or if he goes. It's for the dream of wild horses that he lives. He ain't climbing no ladder of success. It don't matter, always receiving much less than he gives. So call him cowpoke, vaquero, buckaroo, cowpuncher, but whatever you do, just remember, he's a cowboy, he's a legend, he's a hero, the foundation and the pride of our land. Just remember, he's a cowboy, he's a legend, he's a hero, the foundation and the pride of our land. Yeah, he's the soul and the pride of our land.
What's beautiful? Who do you think about when you're singing that song?
Well, I think of a couple of old men I knew when I was younger. I think of Clyde Hale, that was the guy that took me under his wing, kind of like a second dad. He was a good man, and boy, he knew a lot about cowboy. He knew a lot about cattle. He was a cow man too. You know, there's a lot of good cowboys that don't ever really become cow men. That, you know, they're in the business. And I know a bunch of those guys now, and I think of an old guy that just passed away this last year. Paige Bays lived out here at Albany. He lived all over, but he put together cowboy crews a lot. I wrote a song about him a few years ago. Worked with him on the J&J Cattle Company down there. And, you know, there's guys that are my age, but I still consider them the younger generation of the cow men in the country. And Johnny Ferguson over there at J&J Cattle Company is one of them. He's got cattle all over the place and some pretty big outfits, and still runs a wagon out. And it's a good outfit, good cowboy outfit. And, you know, there's the guys over at Brooks Hodges is still a young guy that manages the pitchfork, and they still take out the wagon quite a bit, and still run an old time kind of outfit over there. So
Something about that hard work and that ethic of, I don't know, just doing what's right and living by your morals. And
yeah, and you know, so much of that, not just the going out with the wagon and doing things the way they used to do it, but that whole mindset is just so different now. There's just not as much of that now. I mean, we look at the world we live in and you think, man, where are we headed? Because there's just so little of that. I know people that live in the city and they go to one of these ranch rodeos out here and they meet these kids that are running around that are ranch raised kids, and it just blows their mind, the work ethic and the politeness and the manners and the the honor that they seem to embody, you know, and those are things that are going away, and you know, Will James and Charles Russell and all those guys said the West was dying, but there's more cowboys and more horses now than there ever has been in the history of the world. But there's more to the West than just cowboys and horses. There's a mindset and a lifestyle and a work ethic that I think is waning away. And I one of the greatest honors that I have in my life is that I was able on 2 or 3 or 4 places, because they let me, spend time out at the wagon. Back in the old days, it wasn't that long ago, but it's becoming the old days quickly, to where spring and fall they took out the wagon, and you lived at the wagon, and they knew I did this singing business for a living. And the Swenson Ranch back then several years ago, and J&J Cattle Company, I've come and gone and been there and then left and whatever, and shot some videos on the J&J Cattle Company in Big Lake and some places like that. And those guys have always been real good to let me come out there and be a part of what was going on and live that dream that most people don't even know exists. But even if they do, they'll never get to live that. And I'll be able to tell my grandkids I went out with the wagon, and they'll be able to tell their grandkids, you know, something my grandfather did that he was proud of. He got to go out at the wagon. He lived out the wagon for part of the time during the big works. That's huge to me.
You know, I don't know. It's just something about the romance of that, you know, the all of the honor and the goodness, you know, sleeping outside under the stars.
And you know, it's not an easy life. The romantic part of it
right.
is Hollywood made most of anything, but it is romantic. It is something pretty amazing.
It stirs something in our minds and in our hearts that harkens back to something that's in all of our roots, because it's how our country advanced to the West, and it's how we, you know, especially those of us in Texas can identify it. You know, here in Abilene, we're named for a cattle town, and the cattle drives and all, and there's just something about that that's right.
Most of these towns west of what we call the Metroplex sprung up around the cattle business in that area, because there are so many parts of West Texas and Northwest Texas and the Panhandle, and that until they discovered oil, they were virtually worthless to do anything with, except raise cattle and sheep and goats. And so livestock has always been the way to make a living. Now in modern times of irrigation and water pivots and deep wells and stuff like that, the Panhandle's become a really big farming part of the world, but it wasn't back in the old days. You couldn't do anything up there except stick a bunch of cattle out there. And you could sure raise a lot of beef in West Texas. And so that's kind of the way it grew up. And every one of those ranches had to have eventually a school and a general store. And after the women folks started coming around, they wanted schools and churches for sure. And so those things started cropping up. Next thing you know, there'd be a little town there. And major cities that we know of now that don't have hardly anything to do with the cattle business, Abilene, San Angelo, Lubbock, Amarillo, they all started as cow towns and grew into railroad towns or oil towns or high-tech towns or college towns or whatever, but they grew from being a hub for ranches to have a place to get their mail. And so, you know, we owe a lot in West Texas to the cattle business, to the ranching business. And that's what cowboy poetry has always been. It's always been in songs, has always been a way to portray that should it ever go away. You know, I heard an old man say one time that he hoped somebody would tell his story lest we all forget. And there'd come a time that if we're not careful, we do forget. We forget all those things. You know, little girls are going to quit making quilts, and there's not going to be anybody on this earth that still knows how to make a quilt one of these days, because the young ladies are not learning those amazing things. Young men are not learning to weld and to build and to rope and to break horses and to work cows and raise cattle and raise beef. They're not learning those things like they used to in the old days when everybody lived in the rural parts of the country. And so those are things that we're losing. I think that's always been the spirit of cowboy poetry and music, is to carry that on and to keep that going. And I think that's the great classics S. Omar Barker, who was mostly very funny poetry. He was hilarious, but real classic old-time poetry. Bruce Kiskadden is probably, he's probably the greatest writer of cowboy poetry ever. And he was just an old cowboy in Arizona, Nevada area. Got kind of stove up a little bit when he was about 40, 45 years old, and moved to Hollywood where they were making silent films and needed cowboys. And he rode horses and rode a chariot in the original silent Ben-Hur, and became a bellhop at an old hotel in Beverly Hills, California as an old man. And on his break, he would sit in the back room and write cowboy poems about his days as a cowboy when he was a young man. And they were published in the Union Stockyard Weekly and in their calendar every year. They're out of Southern California. And, you know, he was just amazing. And his poem, When the Work's All Done This Fall, is probably the Gone with the Wind of cowboy poetry. It's just amazing, long and really emotional. And it's just, those are the kind of things those guys wrote to tell the stories. And so I hope that the songs that I write tell a story. I hope that they tell a story, whether it's about chasing cows through the brush or whether it's about, you know, some old guy just living out his days on the porch. I hope that they tell a story that people can get an image in their mind and kind of a picture in their head, you know, of what the story is telling, because that's what it's all about.
Well, congratulations on your new album.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations in advance on a successful event in Bastrop.
You bet. It's going to be good.
And I want to thank you for coming in
Yes, sir.
to the podcast today.
Appreciate it very much.
And I'm wondering if you can take us out with another one of your songs.
I sure can. This is a song I wrote. I hate to sing those sad songs, but this is a song I wrote a while back based on the kind of the life of an old guy, Tom Blassingame. Worked on the J.A. Ranch till he was 91 years old. And right after Christmas, when he was 91 years old, he was riding a young horse, and he got off under a tree and laid down, put his hat over his head, his arms crossed on his chest, and went to sleep, never woke up. When he was 91, he'd ridden a horse all his life. He's a great cowboy.
You know, there's a scene in one of the Taylor Sheridan shows that's based on
that. Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah, and he was that's a story that's known quite a bit. Buster McClory was managing the J at the time, and he's a guy I known for a long time, and he found him. Him and some other guys found him, and I believe is the story. And anyway, I started thinking about all those cowboys that have outlived their time.
But what a way to go!
What a way to go! You better believe it.
If he could have scripted it, that's what he would have said.
Exactly. Well, he went on his terms. You know.
Yeah.
His wife lived in town, and he lived out in an old shack most of the time. Went home on the weekends some, but he didn't want to live in town in Clarendon or Claude, little old towns, and they were still too big for him. He wanted to live outside the country. So anyway, I wrote this kind of about those cowboys that outlived their time.
Well, as you're getting going there, I would want to tell you folks, join us next time. We'll have another guest. I can't imagine more interesting or more musical inclined than Jeff Gore, but I'll tell you, you can join him in Bastrop. You can join him tonight out at the celebration for his new album. And we'll just go out this way. I want to give a shout out to Stephen Tennyson for producing this episode of Abilene People. I'm your host, Danny Sims. Let's hear it, Jeff.
I sit here and look at your picture as the morning sky turns gray. Drinking my hot black coffee like the start of every day. The spring calves are here, and at night when it's clear, you can hear the coyotes howling, and the wildflowers grow on the hill beside my cabin. And I wish you were here. I remember the winter we came here. The whole place was covered with snow. But then in the springtime we'd go for walks on the hillside where the wildflowers grow. When the sun comes up every morning, I still see your memory so clear, 'cause the wildflowers grow on the hill beside my cabin, and I wish you were here. We ride out Monday morning, making the drive again. It's been 20 years here at the line camp since I lost you, my wife and best friend. But the faces and the rangeland are changing. This'll be my last drive, I fear. But the wildflowers grow on the hill beside my cabin, and I wish you were here. The wildflowers you love still grow on the hill beside our cabin, and I wish you were here. I wish you